What's up guys, and welcome back to the Bonsai-En YouTube channel. I'm Josh, and today we're going to be talking about bonsai tool care. Everything from disinfecting to cleaning and sharpening and after use maintenance. So if you want to learn about that, then stick around. Alright, so before we start the video, just a quick disclaimer letting you know that sharpening tools is not a profession of mine. This is just how I look after my tools and what I've had success with. So take everything with a grain of salt, but if it works for you, then fantastic. Alright, so first we'll just go over a few of the things that I've got here, and then we'll actually do a demonstration on using each one of these products. I'm going to do it all on this set of bonsai scissors that I've got here. These are actually my Kikua bonsai scissors that I use on a regular basis. So they're a good demonstration. But first of all, this little guy here is called a Korean mate, okay? So it's for cleaning all the sap and gunk off the blades. So I'll go through and show you how to use one of these. And then the next thing we've got here is we've got two sharpening stones, okay? Two whetstones. So these are for, as I just said, sharpening your bonsai tools up. So we've got a couple of different grits here, so we'll go through all that in detail as we move forward. Then over here we've got some camellia oil, so some tool oil and an applicator. So I'll show you how to use both of these. And also we've got our isopropyl alcohol, which we use to disinfect our tools as we're moving through working on each of our trees. So, I'll bring the camera in a little bit closer, and first of all we'll take a look at the Korean mate and how to use it. Alright, so we're in nice and close now to my scissors that I've got here, and as you can see out on the tips here, we've got a bit of built up gunk. Now, usually the scissors, they'll be a lot worse than this. You'll have the gunk running all the way up the blades, but I actually clean these on every use, and I've used these recently, so they've not seen too much work since their last clean, which is why we've only got a tiny little bit of gunk on here. I do wish I had did a bit more work before I did this video so I could really show you these blades gunked up. But nonetheless, I can still show you how a Korean mate works. Okay, so this is our Korean mate block here. Now these are actually quite soft, okay? It's basically like a sap eraser. You know, some people call them a sap eraser. Now, I do want to point out that some people use these wet and some people use them dry, okay? And nobody's right or wrong. They work both wet and they work both dry. Me personally, I use mine dry, and as you'll see here, as I start to clean some of the gunk off here, so let's just start with this tip here. You can see the bit of gunk on there. So all we do is just use our Korean mate and give it a bit of a rub. Okay, and like that, it's gone, okay? And now you can see, nice and clean. Now, same, oops, sorry, you guys can't see that real well. Trying to get it in the light good so you can see all the gunk on there, okay? So, once again, this guy out here. Now I'm just going to point it towards me so I can just do it properly. Alright, so you can see just a quick rub there and it's gone, okay? Now on the opposite side you can see over here the two tips have got gunk on them again. So once again, just a quick rub, that one's nice and clean. Now on the other side, a quick rub again, and as you can see, that one there's done. Now, some people say that with a Korean mate that you should try to avoid the edges as much as possible. And while it is a good idea to always try to avoid your cutting edges with anything that you do, a Korean mate is not so aggressive or abrasive that it's actually going to take the edge off your tools, okay? As I showed you before, this guy is, quite soft and pliable, and when you feel it, you'll be able to feel it yourself, how soft and pliable it is. So I wouldn't worry too much about that. I mean, as I said, it's always good to approach these things with a bit of caution, but you should be fine. But that's basically it for the Korean mate. Now you can use this on all your tools, so your branch cutters, knob cutters, anything that gets gunk built up on them. Now, why is it important to use a cream mate? And I'd like to point out too that with my cream mate here, I use this before every time I use my scissors, okay? I give them a quick run over with the cream mate. And the reason why is along your blades here, okay, and especially on this flat edge, okay, you can see, there we go. It's really hard to line it up on the camera, but along this flat edge here, okay, and then your other blade here on this side has a flat edge, and where those two flat edges meet, you know, in the middle, if there's gunk in between those two flat edges, okay, what's going to happen is your blades are going to separate, okay? So we don't want that to happen. As your two blades pass each other, we want them to pass each other perfectly. If you've got gunk built up here, as the two blades pass each other, the gunk will actually pull the blades apart and separate them, okay, causing a gap. You can just see in front of my thumb there, okay, it's not that clear in the camera. But if I pull the blades apart, you can see that a gap forms between the blades, okay? Okay, now you can see it much better. Okay, see how that's flat? Okay, that's how you want it to cut. See how that's got a gap? That's what you don't want. So flush with a gap. Flush with a gap. So, just using your scissors normally will be fine. But if you've got gunk on there, then once again, you're going to cause a gap between the blades and it's not going to cut properly and you're not going to get that sharp, precise cut that we're after. Alright, so the next thing that we're going to move on to now is our sharpening stones. Alright, so here we have two sharpening stones. Now they're both Whetstones. So before we start, we're just going to have a quick talk about some types of stones and also the grits that are used. So first off, I mentioned here that I'm using Whetstones. Now the other normal one that you might see are diamond stones, but I wouldn't recommend using them for bonsai tool. Now, diamond stones are more or less for chisels and all those types of things. You could probably use them on more abrasive tools like axes and that kind of stuff. Now, the reason that is diamond stones are a lot more abrasive and they move a lot more material, okay? So if you think about our bonsai scissors, you know, there's not a whole lot of material on them, okay? So we don't want to be moving a ton of that material off the scissors. We just want to be refining it, okay? So when we use diamond stones, we're moving a ton more material than we would with a whetstone, okay? A whetstone is a lot more abrasive, but still gets the job done, okay? I see a lot of people out there using like these, they're like little tabs, okay? And they've got a little diamond bit on the end of them, and they use them to sharpen their tools. But once again, diamond stones or those diamond little tab keyring things, yeah, they're meant for much more abrasive tools, like I said, maybe sharpening up drill bits and also axes, files, chisels, those kind of things. Definitely not for, you know, much finer, delicate jobs like bonsai tools. We don't want to be moving a ton of material. The other thing that you got to be careful with, okay, so this set of scissors here and basically all my bonsai tools that I use are Kikiwa bonsai tools, right? So with the Kikiwa bonsai tools, I know exactly what steel is in those tools, okay? And it's Japanese steel that's very, very hard, okay? It's a very good carbon steel. But a lot of other brands of bonsai tools out there, and I don't want to slag any other bonsai brands or anything like that, and I'm not going to mention any other brand names, okay? But let's just say if they're not a tool brand that's made in Japan, okay, by a Japanese manufacturer, chances are they probably don't use Japanese steels or a good quality steel, okay? Japanese steels aren't the only good quality steel in the world, but chances are those other tool brands use Chinese steels, okay? And you might ask yourself, well, what do you know about steels or anything like that. One of my first jobs out of high school, for quite a few years, I worked in a steel factory, okay? I used to heat treat steels, I used to tensile test steels, I used to test steels for cracks, okay? So I've seen quite a lot of steels and how they react. There was one time we started importing some steels in from China, and we had to reject 70 to 80% of that steel, okay? Because it was so weak, it didn't heat treat well, it cracked, all that kind of stuff. It was just horrible stuff. So the reason why I'm pointing that out, and it might sound like I'm going on a bit of a rant, but when it comes to steel and sharpening, if you've got a weaker grade steel or a steel that's just not up to par, when you're sharpening, you're actually going to be moving more steel if it's a lower quality. So that's going to segue us into grits, okay? So this little stone that I've got here, this is a 320 grit stone. Now, this is less abrasive than most of the 320 grit stones that you're going to find for like sharpening knives and stuff, okay? So this one here, this is a Kikua whetstone, made, you know, for sharpening bonsai tools. This 320 grit is far less abrasive than most of the 320 grits that you're going to find out there in other sharpening stones, okay? Now, I would say this is probably closer to like an actual 600 grit stone of some of the other stones that are out there. So this grit here would be more or less used for a tool that has gone very blunt, okay, or has got chips and nicks in it, okay? So this is really for putting the actual edge back on the tool, okay? More abrasive. Still less abrasive. If you, okay, say you had a diamond stone in 320 grit, it's going to move so much more material than this one here. So just be very careful, you know, if you're somebody who's using a diamond stone or you've picked up a diamond stone, you know, or anything that's a sharpening tool that says it's diamond, just be careful, because a 320 grit in that is going to be so much more abrasive. And then you couple that with, say, you've got a cheaper brand of bonsai tool that's got a lesser grade quality steel, okay? So the lesser grade the steel, the less hardness and tensile it's got. So it's going to actually lose more material as you're running it along the stone. So just be careful with that. Now this one here that I've got, it's actually got two grits in one. So we've got a 1200 and we've got a 4000. Now the 1200 is what I would mostly use. The 1200 is basically just for refining the edge, let's just say. So we haven't completely lost our cutting edge on the tool, but we just want to bring a bit of sharpness back to that edge. Now with a high quality, you know, carbon steel like this, we're not going to be using this a ton, okay? So we might only use this, let's say once every 6 months or so, because like we've spoke about with our tools before, if we use a high quality carbon steel, it holds its edge so much longer. Now, when I say it holds its edge, remember I said that this one was for actually putting the edge back on and this is for refining. We're not going to have to put our edge back on as much with a tool like this, okay? If we had a stainless steel tool, okay, the downside to stainless steel is it's actually a weaker steel. So the edge of the blade is going to go dull a lot quicker. So we're going to need this guy a lot more with stainless steel. Now this guy, as I said, it's just for refining and putting the edge back on. Now if we were to flip this over and use the 4000 grit, that's more or less for polishing, okay? So these are just the grits that I use. There is kind of an area in between grits. So let's just say from, you know, 320 up to about 800 is for putting the actual edge back on the tool, something that's gone really dull, okay, got chips and nicks. And then say from 800 up to about 2000 would be for refining, okay? and from 2,000 up to about 6,000 for polishing. And the reason why I say that there's an area in between those grits, once again, comes down to the quality of the tool that you were sharpening. Okay, so hopefully I've explained that well enough that you can figure out, okay, well, I've got a cheaper tool, okay? So if you've got a cheaper tool and you want to put the edge back on, I'd maybe say go up to a 1500 grit, okay? Because you've got that cheaper tool, that, you know, cheaper material, it's going to move more. If you were to use a 1200 grit like I do, you're going to actually, with the same stone, with two different tools, if you've got a cheaper tool, you're going to actually move more material with the 1200, okay? So try and combat that a bit by going up to a lesser grit, a less harsher grit with a 1500, say. So I hope that makes sense. Once again, I hope I'm not rambling, but we'll just quickly go over it again, the grits and the types before I move on, just so we've got it, you know, kind of sunken in a little bit. So, any diamond sharpening tools are going to move material a whole lot quicker than a whetstone is. They're a lot more abrasive, okay? So a lower grit on a diamond stone is going to move a ton more material than a lower grit on a whetstone, okay? And that's the same for the grits going up. A 1200 grit in a diamond stone is going to be a lot more abrasive than a 1200 grit on a whetstone. So just be careful with that. And then you couple that with having a cheaper set of tools that haven't got as hard of a steel, okay? Once again, if you've got a diamond stone coupled with a cheaper steel tool, you're going to be moving way too much material on a really delicate type of tool, okay? We only want to refine with these. We don't want to be moving a ton of material. And then once again with our grits, our 300, say up to our 800 for moving a lot of material, putting an edge back on a tool that's gone really dull, it's got chips and nicks. From say 800 up to about 2000 is our refining, okay? Bringing that sharpness back to our edge. And then say from 2,000 up to about 6,000 is polishing, making it look shiny and nice. Okay, so I hope I've explained that well. So next, we're going to move on to preparing our whetstones. Alright, so as you can see, we've got our bucket of water here. Now I just want to take this moment to address some concerns that some people had from my last whetstone demonstration, and that was that I didn't wet my stones enough. Now, back in the day, that would have been true. The whetstones these days aren't like the ones, you know, of past. So the ones of past, you would have had to have soaked them for about 3 hours. Now, you can see this stone here, it's not very big. So if I put it in the water, you see all the bubbles come out of it? And usually, you would leave it in there until the bubbles stop, okay? Let me just run all the bubbles off the surface there. And see, we've got no more bubbling. So this whetstone's ready to go straight away, okay? So that one's good. Now this stone here, this is what we call these days a splash and go stone. So I don't even have to put it down into the water here, okay? So, as you can see, it is bubbling a little bit. But with these stones here, what I like to do with mine is I wet it, but then as I'm using it, I just splash water over the top of it and then start working it. But what I like to do is, the reason that I do actually put this one in a bucket of water is before every use, I like to put it in the water and just kind of rub the surface down, okay, until you can feel that it goes smooth. Because, you know, as we store these things, they might get a bit of grit, grime on them, okay, dirt. They might have some material on them from the last time that you used them. And what you want is a really flat surface when you're sharpening. So I like to just try and clean these off as much as I can, okay? Make sure that there's nothing on them. And then that is our whetstones prepared. So there's really not too much to preparing your whetstone. But if you're going to buy one, just check, because not all of these stones are splash and go. Mine is. That's why I don't soak it. But if you read up on them, some of them, you know, most manufacturers these days will have whether a pre-soak is required or not, okay? Most of them don't need a pre-soak these days, but there's some of them that still do. So we'll get these out of the water now and bring the camera back down and start the sharpening process. Alright, so you can see that we've got our whetstone here, that we've put it in the water. So I'm just going to splash some more water on it here, okay? Always make sure the top of your stone has got some water on it. Now, we've got our scissors. So we've got two sides here that are, we're mostly going to be working with. So we've got our side here, which is our angled side, okay? Or some might call it the beveled side. And then we've got our flat side, okay? So when we're sharpening, we need to concentrate on this side, okay? On the angled side, because this is the side that's going to actually give us our sharp edge. When we do the flat side, all we're doing there is taking the burr off that we're going to create when we're sharpening the other side. Now, some people who sharpen professionally use like leather, okay, to lap off the burrs on the other side, but that's not something that I'm familiar with. So I just use the stone to take that off, but we'll show you that as we go. So this is the side that we're going to be mostly concentrating on here, is the angled side. So once again, put some more water on. Now, when we put our scissors down on here, it's usually easier, okay, not to go straight, but on a little bit of an angle, okay? This is just going to help you with your pressure a little bit, okay? And also, one thing you want to make sure of is your other blade that's back here, you don't have this running across the edge of the stone like that, okay? Because you're going to ruin your edge on this blade. So I usually use my right hand, okay, this hand, to hold this blade. I put my fingers in between the blade and the stone, okay, and then I use my left hand, and what I do is I kind of rock back and forth, okay, and when you rock back and forth, you can feel as the blade becomes flat with the stone, okay, and that's what you want. You don't want the blade, being up or up this way, because what you're going to do is actually take the edge off your blade rather than putting it on, okay. So rock back and forth until we find that flat area, and then you can use 2 fingers, 3 fingers, 4 fingers if you can fit them, but this is a very small set of scissors, so the blade's not that big, okay. Apply an even amount of pressure over the whole entire length of the blade, okay. That's why it's probably better to use as many fingers as you can fit on the blade. And then we just want to move forward, okay. And then as we come back, you can lift up all the way if you want, or you can just take the pressure off and move back, okay? And then move forward again. See, with me, when I do it, I do like a smooth motion, okay, back and forth, where I don't have to completely lift the tool all the way up, okay? I can go forward and back, okay? As long as when you're pulling back, that edge that you're sharpening, okay, actually comes up off the stone. You don't want to bring it back as well as forth, okay? So forward with pressure, backwards with no pressure. Now, there's no race here. If you just go slow like this, okay, there's no problem there at all, okay? And then, I don't know if you can actually see it on the camera here, but see this cloudiness here, okay? See it on my finger there? That's actually the material being moved off the scissor, okay? Off the blade. So what I like to do is just get rid of that material off there with a bit more water, okay? And you can see it kind of on the blade as well. And I can already feel that starting to get a bit sharper. So I'm just going to give it a few more runs along here. And that should be good enough, okay? You don't need a whole lot to get the job done. Now, I'm just going to clean the stuff off my scissors there, and then clean the stuff off. Now, we've got to do the other side. Now that we've sharpened along here, there's going to be a burr on this flat side. Now, I have heard people say that you don't sharpen the flat side of your scissors, or you don't run the flat side of your scissors along a stone. But once again, that's not true. You have to. But the thing is, you do it less, okay? So let's say you give, 15 to 20 runs on the other side, which might be a bit too much. You can probably get away with 10 runs, but depends on the grit and what you're doing. So a lower grit, like a 320, you might only need to do 10 strokes across, okay, to achieve the job. With a 1200, you might need to do 20 strokes, okay? With a 4000, you might need to do 40 strokes. Just, once again, it all depends on the quality of the steel and what type you're using. Once again, on a diamond, type stone, you're going to need to do less again. Okay, so, just on a quick note, I've just noticed that all the water's running through this table and dripping onto my lap, and now it looks like I've peed myself. Lucky I'm not standing up and doing this. Alright, so, when we do the flat side with a sharpening stone like this, we're not going to be able to do it in the same spot that we did up here, because what happens is your handle hits up against here now, and what that does is it leaves minimal room in between your blade and your stone. So what I like to do is move all the way up to the back side of my stone here, okay? So now I can get that stroke before we hit the handle, okay? So the handle's got room behind the stone to move. So I like to use the back side of the stone to do the flat side of the blade. Now once again, we can do it on a little bit of an angle because it's just easier to hold everything on an angle. It's hard to explain on the video, but if you try and go sideways, it's really awkward to do it sideways. Whereas if you do it on a little bit of an angle, everything's just a lot more comfortable, okay? So, once again, we're going to put a bit more water on the stone here, which means I'm probably going to end up with a bit more water on my lap under the table here. And then we're going to put the flat side down, okay? We're going to make sure that this blade is away. I'm going to just hold the blade here. Going to try and get as much of this blade onto the stone as I possibly can. And then we're just going to move forward and come back. And that should be all we need for our flat side, okay? And I can already feel how much sharper that is now. So, once again, we've got the cloudiness on the stone, and we've got it on the back side of the scissors. So we're going to clean that off, and now we're going to quickly do the other side. So I'll quickly do the other side, okay? And I won't really explain it because I already explained it on the other one. Alright, so that's that side done there. Once again, on the stone, you can see all the material that was moved off. And we can clean that off, okay, with a fresh bit of water. And then once again, give it a quick splash. We can come back down to our flat side, down the bottom end of our stone, okay. Try and hold this blade away as best as possible. Get as much of that blade on there as possible. Make sure it's flat. And then that's it for the flat side. And now I can feel that these scissors are very, very sharp again. Okay? Now, we can turn over, okay, to our 4000 grit. Give it a quick clean off. Alright. Now my stone here, it has got a fair bit of staining and, you know, whatnot on it, just because of the, you know, past uses and everything that it's had, and that happens. But as long as you can feel across the surface of the stone that it's smooth and there's no grit or grime on there that's going to get between your blades, you're going to be all good. Now, once again, this side's just exactly the same, except now you're going to feel it's much smoother and you're going to be moving a lot less material. Now, you don't really even need to, you know, use this kind of grit. This is just for, you know, making your tools look nice again, you know, getting that shine back on the blades. But in bonsai, there's, you know, really not too much use and purpose to that, because, you know, once again, we're going to go out, we're going to start cutting our pines and things like that, and we're going to get all that black buildup of, you know, soot all over our tools again. And, you know, with this side of the stone, it takes a lot more, you know, a lot more strokes and a lot more effort to kind of get that job done. Now, it does add, you know, a little bit more refinement to the edge of the blade, okay? But not a ton. You know, usually for people just wanting to sharpen their bonsai tools, you can get away with anywhere between a, you know, 1000 grit up to about a 2000 grit. And as you can see, let me try and get a good angle. You can see that that blade's starting to polish up, okay? Get nice and shiny. And once again, you can see some of the material that we've moved on there. So clean that off. And do the bottom side. Alright, so now that we're all sharpened up, we've got to do some maintenance or some protection on the tools. So, this is something that you can do after every use of your tools, okay? And it's good practice to do that. Now, this is more so for carbon steel tools than stainless tools. Carbon steel tools don't have that content of chromium in them, okay? So that means that they will rust. And a good quality carbon steel, like the ones in these Kikua tools, will actually rust overnight, okay? If I leave these outside overnight, okay, just a bit of humidity or a bit of dew overnight, rests on the tools, by the time I come out in the morning, they'll be covered in surface rust, okay? So obviously we don't want that. We want to protect them. That way we can use these tools for, you know, basically our whole bonsai career, as long as we don't lose them or drop them on their tips and break the tips, okay? So protecting them up is a good idea. And what we do to protect them is we use camellia oil, okay? And this is pretty much the standard in, you know, the chef industry, the sword industry, all that kind of stuff. Anybody that uses tools or, you know, things like, you know, katanas or swords, chef's knives, those kind of things, they will use camellia oil to protect them. Now, in the chef's industry, this is really popular because camellia oil is actually food safe, okay? But in every other industry, like bonsai and with people who have swords and stuff, it's really popular because it's quite cheap, okay? You need very little of it to, you know, put a fine coat over the thing. So a bottle like this will last you a long time. And also too, it's very easy to clean up. Unlike other oils where you kind of just push them around the tool and it doesn't really want to come off the tool, making your tool slippery to use. Camellia oil cleans up really easy. And then also on top of that, we've got our applicator, okay? So as you can see, mine's a little bit, you know, beaten up and dirty from use because this is my personal one. This just makes it easier to apply onto the tool. there's less wastage, okay? So if you were to just get this bottle and try and apply this onto the tool, the oil's going to go everywhere, you're going to waste a lot of oil, okay? Whereas by using a felt tip applicator like this, you just put on what you need and you don't waste a whole lot. So, the first thing I'm going to do is teach you about the applicator, and then we'll put the oil on the tool. So, pretty simple. Inside our applicator here, okay, we have the other end of our felt, and we've got some cotton. Now, mine's actually got enough oil in it now that it doesn't need any more, but just for the purposes of this demonstration, I'll just show you that, you know, you basically get your oil and pour it in, you know, over your cotton like this until it's nice and your cotton's nice and soaked up full of oil. And then what'll happen is the felt will actually draw the oil out of the cotton, okay, up into the other end, okay? And then what we can do is after we use our bonsai tools, okay, we're ready to pack them away for the day, we can come on through and just rub the applicator on our blades like that. And the applicator will actually put a nice even application of oil, nice thin application over the blade, so you can see how you don't, you know, really waste much. We can put some over our rivet here. Now, I do recommend that if your tools are a little bit older, okay, I've only had this set of scissors here for probably 6 months or so, okay. These were a gift to me from Japan. So these ones aren't as old as some of my other carbon steel tools are, but over time, what you'll find, even it's starting to happen on these ones, you can see along this seam just here, that the protective coating starts to wear off, this black protective coating, okay. These ones have a little bit more of a stronger coating on them than some of the other tools do, but it'll start to wear off and you'll start to see the actual colour of the steel, like the blades, come through, okay? And the more of that that's exposed, the more that you're going to have to apply this oil down your tool, okay? So you can apply this all over your tool if you want to, just a thin layer all the way over your tool. But if you've got a lot of that protective coating still on there, you might not have to. But let me just say this, that even with this protective coating on, with a high quality carbon steel like this, like even this tool right here, okay, one of the higher end tools that you can get, if I leave this out overnight, it's still going to get surface rust over the whole thing. But inside, okay, if I put this back in my toolbox, okay, inside, not a problem. I would just protect the blades, okay? If you're somebody that leaves your tools, you know, out, let's say under a carport or something like that, just sitting on a table, or out on a balcony on a table, whatever it may be, then I would say oil up the whole entire tool like this. Okay, and then that is protected. Now, let's just say we've got our tool out, okay, ready for our next use. This is where our isopropyl alcohol will come in handy. Now this has got two uses. We can give our tool a good spray just here, like this. Okay. Come in with our rag. And just give it, you know, a good wipe down. Give all the handles a wipe down where we applied that oil to. Well, there's a good example of the protection coming off on the ends of the handles where they clack together. Okay, and you can see it on that side as well. So that's an open part that's, you know, not got much protection on it. So if I was to leave these, you know, outside, they would rust up quite well. Now, the tool's nice and clean. It's not slippery because all that camellia oil actually came off, okay? So that's where our isopropyl alcohol comes in handy for our first use. And then also, this is quite a big bottle here. You can get the smaller little pump bottles, okay? If you're going to work on a lot of trees, you can keep that in your back pocket or keep it at your workbench with you. And before you move to the next tree to work, okay, say I'm working on a juniper over here, and then I'm going to start working on a pine over here. Before I would start working on the next one, I would just get my isopropyl alcohol, give my blades a good spray like that, okay, work it in, and then clean it off. And then what that will do is stop you from, if one tree's got a fungal infection, you can actually get the spores on your scissors, move that over to the next tree, and now you've just given the next tree that same fungal infection, okay? So that's basically the isopropyl alcohol and your camellia oil for protecting your tools. Alright, so that's it for today's video. I hope that's helped answer some of the questions that you do have about your tool care and your tool maintenance. A lot of this stuff that you're seeing here today is available from Bonsai-En. So if you're in Australia and you want to protect your tools, then you can grab that stuff from our web store. I'll leave a link down in the description below. If you're overseas, maybe check your local online bonsai retailer or your local bonsai store if you have one in your town, and they will most likely have all this stuff that I've got sitting in front of me. If you want to learn more about bonsai, then head over to www.thebonsaidojo.com, which is our new online learning platform. We currently have our Bonsai Beginners course up there, which has over 4 hours of content to go through. And it's very, very cheap. You'll be surprised at how cheap it is. So go over there and have a look. If you want some merchandise like I've been wearing today, you'll see the bar down below the video with our merchandise on it. Click on that and head over and check out our merchandise. Every bit of that merchandise that you guys buy supports this channel and helps me make more videos like this one. But until next time, enjoy your bonsai journey.